Without any further ado, I will just give a quick introduction here. The webinar that we are in now, this is Reimagine Our World, Action for Peace, Justice, and the Planet. This event is a collaboration, of course, between the Asia-Europe People's Forum and the International Peace Bureau, or IPB, of which I'm a member. I am Sean Connor. I am the coordinator of international matters for the World Peace Congress, which will be taking part this October 15th to 17th in Barcelona, Spain, as well as with a virtual component for those who will not be able to attend in person, be it for reasons of the corona pandemic or whatever other reason. We are hoping to reach a very wide audience. So today's event, the reason we've decided to schedule this and that you are all with us is on one hand to draw together a little bit more the lessons that we have learned and taken from the AEPF 13 forum over this past week. There have been many very interesting sessions. I hope that you have attended some of those. I've been able to make it to a few, but of course there are so many we can't make it to all. So we think that we can share those lessons with each other for those that were unable to attend, and then also tie it into the event that will take place this October, the World Peace Congress, so that we can really bring all of that with us as we approach the Congress. We will talk more about the Congress later in the session today, but just as a very basic overview, it takes the same, more or less same name as this webinar event, Reimagine Our World, Action for Peace and Justice. The reason for this is that we believe, especially now with the coronavirus pandemic, that now is the time that we need to reimagine, repicture the future that is in front of us, and to come together to share our perspectives and ideas on how we can make a better future and a just future for everyone. And more importantly then, how we reach that, what actions we can take for peace and justice in 2021, 2022, and beyond that. So we're very excited to hear all of the ideas you have today. We also have some great musical performances, both live and some recorded performances by some really talented artists that we're excited to share. And we'll also have a session coming up right after this that my colleague Stephanie will speak a little bit about. And that session is for the children, if there are any children joining us today. So we hope for those that may have some children with you, let them come up to the computer and here for the next session. Without further ado then, I turn over to Stephanie.
Hi everyone. So I guess the first question is, are there any kids here? Does anyone have a child? Is anyone babysitting or got your grandkids there or anything? So please maybe just raise your hand so that we know if there are any kids here. Otherwise, I mean, like, you're all free to do our drawing activity if you like, but this was what we were hoping to be the activity for the kids. So yeah, but so far I'm not seeing that there are any kids present. So
well, if that's the case, Stephanie, maybe then you can give the task, and anyone who's here who maybe would like to participate is definitely welcome to as well.
So what we were going to, someone's cat is in the room. If they're able to draw, they're welcome to do this task. So what we're going to ask the kids to do is to draw a picture that depicts how they would reimagine the world. So if they could change anything, maybe they can put themselves like 20 years in the future or 50 years, 100 years in the future. What do they think the world is going to look like, or how would they like the world to look like? So we were like hoping that the kids could put together a quick drawing during the time that we have our adult session coming up after this, and then we were going to give the kids some time at the end of the session where they could come in front of the camera if they wanted to and to explain their drawing. So if anyone wants to do this, still with or without a kid, you are welcome to. We would also really love to see your drawing at the end, but no pressure, it's totally optional. So yeah, so I guess we can now move on to the next session or the next section of this webinar, which was I'll introduce Bina, who is our board member, and she's going to speak a little bit about what's happening in Myanmar and also with her own people in India in the town of Manipur with the COVID crisis and other violence that's happening. So yeah, I turn it now over to Bina.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, and congratulations to the Asia Europe Peace Forum for organizing this really couple of days amazing galvanizing, which is the need of the hour. I have to apologize, I couldn't even attend one meeting because the COVID crisis in India and particularly in my home state Manipur really exacerbated in the last couple of weeks, which has resulted in many dying right now, even as I speak. As a result, I had to jump in together with a group of people in my home state, Manipur, as well as in Delhi and others to be able to see what we can do. So again, as I mentioned, that I would like to really thank again the International Peace Bureau as we try to imagine the world, reimagine the world. Because during this time of COVID and conflict, this is a time where it is a time of pain, loss, frustration, languish, but I also see it as a time for us to really put our energies together. Because if we do not turn it right now, then we will not be able to leave a world for our children and grandchildren. And for me, particularly coming from Manipur, my home state, which has seen more than 72 years of conflict and a martial law imposed since 1958. For the last, ever since I became an adult, I've been trying to find solutions to the conflict, which has resulted in 50,000 killed. Until now, there is no solution. I have tried local, I have tried to work with the United Nations, I have tried to work with disarmament treaties. It is not working. So again, today, as you give us the opportunity to speak on behalf of many people in Manipur, the northeast of India, and most particularly the indigenous people of both Manipur and Myanmar. So today I'm just going to, in the next 1 or 2 minutes, just going to share what is happening right there. India, after United States, has we have now 166 million corona cases around the world, with 3 million died because we have failed our civilization to protect us from climate crisis, to protect us from wars and conflicts. The virus is a product of how we have destroyed our biodiversity. We have destroyed and hurt Mother Nature, Mother Earth. And this is an impact that we are seeing right now. The importance of talking about Manipur and Myanmar today is Myanmar, particularly since February 1st, we had the military cracking down on pro-democracy protesters, resulting in over 800 killed in the last few months, which includes 50 children who will not be here with us to draw a world they can imagine. I'm also talking about thousands who are orphaned right now in Manipur and in India because of this COVID crisis. It has ravaged communities, ravaged families. Why? Because the government failed to warn us properly, and the government put COVID positive patients within our households, which has resulted in multiple infections because they failed to provide a hospital bed for us. They failed to provide ICU beds. They failed to provide basic oxygen, which will allow human beings to live, which will allow citizens to live. So At this stage, currently Manipur has 300,000 troops of the Indian Armed Forces on our soil right now. This is enough. Within 2-3 days, you could set up an emergency COVID hospital. But everyone is silent. The government has abandoned us. The armed forces have abandoned us. The policymakers have abandoned us. People in Manipur right now are scoring for trying to find 1-2 rupees, $1 or $2 to be able to buy oxygen for those thousands others. Currently, an ICU bed in Manipur costs $1,500 for one night for an ICU bed in Manipur, where people earn $300 a month. Foucault's biopower is at play right now. The rich and the powerful will be saved. Who has vaccines, who have access to ICU beds, the poor and the marginalized indigenous will die. Currently, Manipur has today 15 to 16 people killed every day because of COVID right now. This is minus about 4 to 5 Manipuris were killed before the pandemic because of the conflict. So this is what is happening. And in our neighboring state of Myanmar, as I speak, right now, so many of my friends have been incarcerated, including Tin Tin Aung, who was one of our speakers at the IPB meeting. We have not been able to get her out, so to hundreds of thousands of people, artists, poets, people who care for bringing democracy are being killed right now in Myanmar. As a result, when we reimagine the world, many of us in this room who believe our heart in peace, and that's how we started this work. Right now, Myanmarese people have started arming themselves to fight the military, a military which countries of the world have not been able to dislodge for creating human rights violations. We have failed collectively as United Nations of the world to get the Burmese military to stop killing children and pro-democracy protesters, for which it's our right to have democracy and live in peace. So as we try to again, there are so many facts that we have been discussing all our lives. There's so many treaties that we have been discussing on our lives. We got to do that together. But in the new reimagining our world, I suggest 3 steps. First thing, as we saw in India, and I'm saying right now in Manipur, the people are left to ourselves. Community leaders need to get good people in positions of power, and particularly ensure that there is gender inclusion, women in decision-making, get indigenous people in decision-making, people whose lives we know what's happening, get them into positions of power, not just in our governments, but also at many multinational and multilateral levels where number 2, we got to ensure that the kind of money that we're spending in armaments, as I mentioned, Manipur has a lot of money for securitization, but we don't have enough oxygens to save lives. We don't have enough hospital beds. We got to really continue our clarion call, healthcare, welfare, not warfare. Our talk has to be converted into actions on the streets, into decision-making. This is a time to turn and reimagine our world around. John Lennon did it best in 1960s. We are now 40, 50 years now. We don't have another 40, 50 years left. We have to turn it now, right now. And how do we do it is the thing that people need to wake up to realize, that we cannot elect people with criminal backgrounds like we are doing in Manipur and India right now. Drug dealers, arms traffickers, people who sell our lives are our leaders, dressed in crispy white kurta pajamas. That has to end. So we have to get good people into position making. And finally, and to end with this, on a positive note, I am from Manipur. We have seen amazing indigenous women's galvanizing. Indigenous people are 476 million, spread out in 90 countries all around the world. And all the racialized knowledge of today's world, whether it's political science, sociology, history, do not include the good practices of indigenous people. And Asia is home to 2/3 of the world's indigenous population. 200 million live in Asia. Our indigenous knowledge, our indigenous ways of decision-making, our indigenous governments need to come out in today's world where the neoliberal economy and corporatized democracies have failed with capital F. It is a world where they're talking about more wars, so that their war machines with the permanent 5 members of the UN Security Council have to stop manufacturing 88% of the world's weapons. We got to prevail on them to stop it. So at our local level, at our national level, regional and international level, we have to really act, and hence the term Action for Change for the World Peace Congress that is happening in the next couple of months. We got to put our hearts, our minds, and our conviction to change local, national, and international, to be able to reimagine the world so that our children will be alive to paint a world that they want to imagine right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bina. It's incredibly powerful to hear you speak on this subject. And I think everyone here feels in solidarity both with Manipur and with Myanmar during these different but difficult times in both countries. And I think these lessons are absolutely essential to. All right, others hearing that noise as well here? I think that's okay. That will be with the music here in a second. So thank you again, Bina. And as we prepare, you can hear the sounds now coming from our live artists who will begin in just 1 second here. This is Akuma Akira. He is a singer-songwriter who is active in Utakoi. I hope I pronounced that close-ish anyways, I'm sorry. Meaning singing voice in Japanese. It's a peace movement made up of musicians and singers in Japan. And he will now sing John Lennon's famous song, as Bina had mentioned, Imagine, first in Japanese with Japanese lyrics, and then we'll invite us all to join him to sing together in English. This will include as well our friends of peace in the Philippines, Bong, Jong, and Nino. Thank you, and Akira, when you're ready.
天国はないただ空があるだけ国境もないただ空があるだけみんながそう思えば簡単なことさ夢かもしれないでもその夢を見てるのは一人だけじゃない世界中にいるのさNo heaven It's easy for you to try No hell below us Above us only sky Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. This is how to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and a religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Hope someday you'll join us in the world will be strong. In no possessions, wonderfully you can. No need for greed or hunger, a brother full of man. Imagine all the people you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be strong. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Akira. It's absolutely beautiful to hear the song, especially after the comments Bina has made and how this reimagining is so necessary right now. So now we will bring in some voices into the conversation. These voices are coming from the AEPF as well as the IPB. They will give just short 5 minutes introductory thoughts regarding what they've learned from AEPF 13, as well as their thoughts on how we can reimagine with kind of a focus on a time for a social and ecological transformation. So first we have Hoi Kwon Dong, who is from AEPF 13. He is Vietnamese Peace and Development Foundation, and he's located in Vietnam. He will be followed by Anuradha Chenoy, who is a retired professor and former dean of the School of International Studies at excuse my pronunciation again, but the Jawaharlal Nehru University in India. And then lastly, we will have Rainer Braun, who is the IPB Executive Director and is also involved in the No to NATO campaign in Germany. So we'll start with Kwon Dong, and then we'll go to Anuradha Chenoy, and then Rainer finally.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, friends. Thank you, IPB, for inviting me to speak at this special session. I have to say that I very much like the topic of this open space, reimagine the world. In fact, we are you are now asking me to reimagine a new world from a new world, because COVID-19 has completely changed our world. So now we are living in a new world, and we have to reimagine of another new world. When I first accept the invitation to speak here, 3 questions came into my mind. The first question is, what is our world like now? The second question, why do we need social and ecological transformation? That means why we need to restructure all aspects of life. And the third question is, what is the world in our dream? So for the first 2 questions, I would like to remind you to take a look at our world, some point in our world today, so that we can find why we have to reimagine the world. I have just updated the pandemic, the COVID-19, until now, until today, more than 166 million people infected, and more than it's nearly 3,500,000 deaths. It's very big number, and you can see the situation in the U.S. as the biggest country, the richest country in the world, a developed country. And also take a look at India as also a big country, but a developing country as an example. So COVID-19 not only attacked poor country, developing country, but also big country. And via the pandemic, via the COVID-19 crisis, we can see a lot of problem of the world. And now a lot of people, a lot of CSO, people's movement are struggling for vaccine equality. That is a very big question, and I will. There is one thing that there is information released by GCOM that we will need only 0.7% of the global military spending. 0.7%. If we need 0.7% of the global military spending, we will fund the global vaccination. But we don't have. And the second, please take a look at Gaza and the West Bank. Take a look at Myanmar. As Bina said, that 800 people have been killed since the 1st of February. It's a very big number. The third problem I'd like to think about is the environment crisis. The environment crisis is accelerating at an unprecedented rate. And to be honest, we are not ready for it. Just take an example in ASEAN only. The Mekong crisis adds threat to the livelihood of 60 million people in lower Mekong countries. Please be reminded that the total number of population in ASEAN is 600 million. And only the Mekong crisis adds threat to 60 million people. That is 10%, including Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. So for all the crises we are having now in the world, who suffer? The government suffer, businesses suffer, the elite class suffer? I don't think so, no. It's people, it's civilians to suffer. So just some very brief about the situation now. It's not comprehensive, but what we can see. So what is our dream world? A dream world with no pandemic, no conflict, no war, no environmental, no ecological problem. It will be a world of peace, a world of biological diversity, a world where government take care of its people, a world where people's interest is put ahead profit, a world we do not have to talk about nuclear weapons, we do not have to talk about US and Chinese hegemony in the South China Sea, in some other areas in the Middle East. So what should we do? I think that we are now doing a very good job. The idea that we connect a peace movement, people, organization with each other is a very a great job. I want to share with you one of the reasons, one of the factors bringing about the victory of the struggle of the Vietnam struggle for national independence is that at that time there was a very big, we can say that the biggest ever international solidarity front in support of Vietnamese people. So now it's very important that we can connect peace movement, we can connect people, organization, we can connect.
Is Quang frozen for others as well here?
Yes, he's also frozen for me.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
due to our time constraint anyways, we will move on then to our next speaker. And when Quang
1 minute.
finishes-
Yes, I like the idea that we can connect the IPB Congress with other networks. And it's very nice that we, the Peace and Security cluster of the AEPF, can be working with the IPB friends. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Quang. We will now move on to Professor Chenoy.
Thank you, and Bina, I had the privilege of having her as my student, has given a slice of reality, not just of Manipur and Myanmar, but that's true of India and almost all of Asia. And the last 7 days, AEPF has been discussing all these aspects. So, and I also agree with Kung, my collaborator and friend. So I'm just going to reel off my wish list for Reimagine Our World, which I think is common to all of us. And that is a carbon-free world where the destroyed species revive and climate change is held back. A common right to speak freely, to dissent and to gather publicly across countries. Equality between genders, between race and ethnic and religious groups, guaranteed employment and dignified living, social harmony, and a strictly non-violent ways at all levels of social, community, state, and international levels of negotiation, procedural democracy, and quick delivery of justice, a just peace where states abide by a robust system of international law. So that's a world one can hope for, even if we don't think it's possible. If we, you know, the World Social Forum used to say everything is possible, so that's where I stop. Thank you.
Thank you. That's wonderful. A great wish list, and we surely hope we can get there. Of course, one thing to get there will be taking action, and maybe Rainer will bring some of that into it now with Rainer Braun, Executive Director of IPB, will give his thoughts.
You know, thank you all for joining this meeting, and thank you, the Asian Pacific People's Forum, for giving us a chance to present the idea of the Barcelona Congress. You know, when you are going back to John Lennon's song, 1971, we were in the middle of the Vietnam War and the fight for civil rights in the United States. the development of a policy of common security in Europe. Many of these happened during the next years. We had in 1975 the first big UN conference, again for the environment. Thousands of people were joining. We had in the 80s the three main reports: the Olaf Palme report for common security, the report of Gro Harlem Brundtland for sustainable development, and the Willy Brandt report for equal social relation between North and South. That developed a new spirit of engagement and activities on very different levels and by different social movements. But what is for me the absolutely new situation? The new for me is that none of these problems, social justice, climate justice, and peace, can be solved as a singular problem. This brings me to my critical words, to the word social ecological transformation. I think this is not the right description. What we need is a social ecological peace transformation. Social justice and climate justice is impossible without peace, and peace is impossible without social justice and climate justice. So these three main developments and main crises, like Anu and Bina described them, and none of them mentioned Africa as a key spot for crisis and daily dying by wars and by hunger. These crises can only be solved together. And this, I think, is the vision of the Barcelona Congress. The vision of the Barcelona Congress is to bring the different social movements together and to bring them and develop with them more actions for peace, social, and ecological justice. This is, I think, the vision and the dream behind the Congress. And an organization like IPB, 130 years old, historically and actually full of visionaries, has the chance to bring these visions together. And this is what we are trying to do in Barcelona. And when I'm looking to the programs, the ideas, can you imagine a conference where key players of the environmental movement are together with the leaders of the trade unions, with the leaders of the peace movement, the anti-nuclear weapons movement, the climate movement, and with key political leaders? I think this is the chance of the Barcelona Congress. And in the year 2021, I will not say after the pandemic, but the lessons learned from the pandemic, I think it is the need to create new and more actions for peace. We have to combine our activities. We have to develop new coalitions of like-minded thinkers. We have to put together the different social movements. And we have, along the song of John Lennon, with a dream and with a hope, we have to develop more actions worldwide for the future. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Rainer. We will now open up the discussion. To anyone who would like to share any comments or thoughts, really it is wide open. We do ask you to raise your hand so that we can try to call people in the order that they would like to be addressed. Just some thoughts, and I will post this in the chat. Some areas you might want to consider would be reflections on the short interventions that were just made by our three speakers, your thoughts, personal thoughts on a just transition, including the lessons you may have learned over the past week, or at any point that you think are worth sharing with the rest of us. What are the next steps? How do we take these lessons from this week at the AEPF 13 to the Barcelona Congress and beyond, and other ideas or actions, activities that can be done this year, next year, and beyond as we try to create this world that we are reimagining. So feel free to raise your hands or to post that you have something to say. You can either just post that into the chat, or you can share your comments that way. The floor is open. Bina, I see Bina has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. This this is something which I'm just throwing it out there. And the reason I'm saying this is because currently, for example, India has 43% of its parliamentarians with criminal background reports right now. And we have in Manipur former drug traffickers, people who have done crimes, which are our leaders. And during the pandemic, as well as pre-pandemic, it has become clear that the political leaderships in our communities, local, national, it's not working. The way it is right now, India spends 1% of its budget on healthcare, not even 1%. And 3 times of its budget is spent on military. So we do not have, for example, Manipur has 1,333 doctors for 2.2 million people. And that's why more people are going to die right now. So the point that I wanted to share with all of us to ideate together, as Sushan, you said, this is more like a, not very open, but we can frankly share again, is it is time that we have a school for political, like people who are going to be our leaders within political leaders in the parliament. If we need doctors to be trained, if we need people, then we should also have, as International Peace Bureau or people, can we imagine a place that we tell people, you cannot be our leader if you are putting your contracting work, your gun dealing work, your drug trafficking work in front, and not the needs of the people. It cannot go on like this. The criminals cannot be our leaders. The criminalization of our democracy is what we are seeing, the lack of ethics in our leadership, which has resulted in abandoning people to live on its own during this crisis. So this is something that we must ideate together. If for getting a PhD, you need to get this training. To become a doctor unit, we should have a place where we cannot let people be our leaders if we do not have certain basic, criteria. We cannot do this anymore. Yeah. Sean, you're muted.
That's good.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you so much, Bina. We really appreciate all of your thoughts there. Coming to our next hand, I see we have Balkrishna Purve has his hand up. If you would like to share now.
Thank you, Bina, for highlighting the problem of Manipur and Myanmar. I have worked in Manipur and Northeast India regarding banning anti-personnel landmines. We contacted many government officers, people like you, NGO, and were successful in convincing 7 non-state actors or militant group to sign the treaty in Geneva Parliament that they will not use the anti-personnel landmines and the Chinese soldiers. I'm talking the greater perspective of the India because we are the country of the 1.3 billion people. And unfortunately, we do not have a good relation with our neighbor Pakistan. There is a misunderstanding, enmity between these 2 states. And there is a problem that there may be limited nuclear war between these states due to misunderstanding to some militants or any Gilead military officers. As per the research done by the International Physician for Prevention of Nuclear War, in limited nuclear war, if both states will use 10 to 15 nuclear bombs, 2 billion people in Asia will be affected. Out of that, 1 billion die due to starvation. I repeat again, 1 billion die due to starvation. And I'm arranging this program all over India. No more Hiroshima, no more Nagasaki Peace Museum. We have no more Hiroshima, no more Nagasaki Peace Museum. And we take this Peace Museum to many cities in like Delhi, Calcutta, all parts of India. And whosoever will saw this Hiroshima, Nagasaki atomic bombing, they will never say that there should be nuclear war. But unfortunately, in India and Pakistan also, I have many friends in Pakistan, they are not aware of the horrible impact of the nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapon is just like another bomb for them. And if something happens in Pakistan and India, people say, let's start the war. bomb Pakistan or bomb India. They are ignorant. I was discussed with the diplomats, government officers, ministers. They are not aware of the horrible impact of the nuclear weapons. In my country, especially in India and Pakistan, we have to educate the people regarding horrible impact of the nuclear weapons. If not, then God save us. So public education and awareness is the key that we can educate the people, all sort of people, politicians, leaders, and we may get rid of this. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much, both Krishna. Very important to bring nuclear weapons into this conversation. It will, of course, be a large topic for the Barcelona Congress, among several other themes and topics that will be there, but we will definitely have that as a central point of the conversation. Coming up next, Rainer Braun would like to contribute.
You know, Bina, I want to continue a little bit with your thoughts. When you are thinking about the criminal actions of politicians, when you are thinking of all the corruption, when you have in mind that people are earning money with vaccine by the patents, when you see that people are earning money, a lot of money by selling the masks, then you have to think about why this happened. And then you definitely have to discuss about capitalistic system. You cannot avoid to discuss about capitalism when you want to discuss about these crimes, about how the strong ones, the big ones, are misusing their power, and the poor ones don't come out of their situation. And for War and Peace, I always remember this famous sentence from Jean Jaurès, who he made some days before the World War. The capitalistic system is carrying the war in itself, like the clown carries the rain. And I think also a part of the Barcelona Congress has a need to deepen our discussion. What is the background of the crisis and the actual situation we are facing? And then I think we cannot avoid to discuss also about the capitalistic system in the world. I'm muted.
Thank you, Rainer. Thank you very much for adding that in. I think one thing that we see time and time again is the interconnectedness of so many issues that we're facing these days: nuclear weapons, economic systems, patterns of migration, climate change, and of course, war and conflicts. It really is impossible to pull apart these issues completely. They all share several different ways they're connected together. And I think that's something that we've seen throughout this week of AEPF. And it is, again, a central point for our Congress in Barcelona that we will be bringing together, as Rainer had said earlier, groups from trade unions, climate change activists, those who are working in all these different fields. Really, our goal is bringing them together. I don't see any other hands up at the moment. Would anyone else like to add their thoughts into the discussion? You can raise your hand or write in the chat, or if you have your video on, I'm currently looking at everyone's screen, so you can also just raise your hand up if that's easier for you. If we don't have any more thoughts, maybe I'll share something that I had gotten out of this week of AEPF, and that was a very wonderful talk on common security policy in Asia that was held, I believe, this past Wednesday or Thursday. And I think that issue was also very, very important to bring into our conversation in Barcelona. This idea that we cannot have confrontational foreign policy where nations build up their armies, their militaries, as a way to ensure security. We see that that does not work. It leads to an arms race, and it doesn't make anyone really feel secure. And it also doesn't have any help for the situation that India is facing and Manipur is facing right now, that that sort of security of military security doesn't address viruses. It doesn't address climate change or any of the other issues. These are issues that we need to face by cooperating, and a common security policy in which one's security is based on the security of others as well. And this idea, I think, is one that definitely needs to be explored further, and it's something IPB is working on prior to and during the Barcelona Congress. So I would just like to share that. Anyone else have any questions or thoughts or ideas? If not, we will move on to the next session.
John, Philip is here. We should hear from him.
Philip will be contributing at the end, but I would definitely be happy to hear his thoughts if he would like to contribute now as well.
He was the one who came up with reimagining the world.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Bina. I'm not sure if I'm online here.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. I do have some remarks to make at the end of the conference. That was my task for today. It is striking, Bina, that in Manipur you have 300,000 soldiers and 1,000 doctors. 300,000 soldiers, but not 300,000 beds. In Myanmar, I would say that the planet has blood on its hands. It's not just the military of Myanmar. It's the complacency of the world in the face of the death and destruction that we see in the country. A world that is looking the other way, and at the same time fuels the aggression with arms transfers and arms trade. I like Kwon Dong and his comment that if we just spent 0.7% of the world's military expenditure, we can have a vaccine for all. What I like about the conversation we're having is that we have this responsibility to reimagine the world. And it's been very tiresome in the broader debate that this sense of an alternative often gets lost. And I have a worry that the initial thrust and conversation about building back better, about finding new, more progressive solutions, will, as the program of vaccination progresses and there is a way of managing this crisis, that all the reasons that got us into this problem will be somehow ignored or forgotten. And that was really, my worry is based on the other crises that we have faced in the world, climate in particular, but also in the consequences of the response to the finance crisis that we saw in 2007, 8, 9, 10. There was a clear willingness expressed by many that we would build back better, that we would try and find a new economic arrangement, that there would be a new social contract. And within 2 years, those promises had been forgotten. The political winds changed, leaders changed, and the undertakings that were made, which I think were essentially those based on goodwill and progressive thinking, were forgotten. I see an enormous danger now that with COVID-19 and that sense of build back better will be lost. And I hope that the conference in Barcelona and all the thinking processes that go into this and the galvanizing, Bina, that you refer to, of the peace movement, of the sustainable development movement, of the climate change movement, of the labor movement, and indeed the democracy movement can persist and also use imaginative methods and ideas to get our message across about reimagining the world. This world has become very good at doing bad things, and the world has frankly no excuse. We know that unless we reduce carbon production, that this planet will choke, And it will be more than just the 60, not just, it'll be more than 60 million people that we refer to in ASEAN that are being placed at risk. So my hope is that we have this responsibility to reimagine the world, and that the Barcelona event, as this week has proven, is that we are thriving with ideas, thriving with manifestos, and I hope that we can find the means and the wherewithal to translate that into meaningful action. My stat of the day is that 43% of Indian members of parliament have got criminal convictions. Oh my God, you should be building schools for the children and prisons for these people in India, Bina. So there's some remarks that I make before we close the session in a short while. But I think the idea of the reimagine idea was the sense of an alternative, the responsibility that we have to present that alternative, and as Rainer says, to demonstrate it that we are in this movement together, and that you cannot separate economic justice and climate justice for the need for peace in this world.
Thank you so much, Philip. With that, unless there are any final thoughts anyone would like to share, then I will pass the chairing over to Stephanie.
Yeah, actually, just before we move on to the next segment, which will be music, I had something also of myself that I wanted to say, of that I feel quite often very, very overwhelmed by everything, the climate, the inequality, the poverty, the violence that I hear all around the world. And I feel overwhelmed, and I don't know in myself, like, how we can ever come back from this. Like, how are we supposed to reverse this? And it's just, it's overwhelming, and it's too easy. I have to just stop reading about it. And it's so easy to just like stick my head in the sand and just pretend that it's not happening, because it's just too much to think about. And like listening to Bina before, of, she's like, ever since I've become an adult, I've been trying to come up with solutions to this answer, and for solutions to this problem, and she's just not getting anywhere. And so this is also one of the things that I'm excited about and looking forward to with the conference, is because, like, I'm just one small person. What on earth am I supposed to do? And I just feel very hopeless. And so this is why I end up just like putting my head under my pillow, because I just don't know what else to do about it. But realizing, like what Rainer was saying, how, and all of you all together as well, that we can't, we can't resolve, just like look at each of these issues individually. We need to like tackle them from an intersectional point of view, and that we can't do it alone. We have to come together to do it. And this is like what we've all said with the Congress, is like our biggest assets and our biggest tools in tackling all these problems is each other. And when we come to this Congress, we will be together, and we can like pull all of our resources to try and come up with a solution, because we're just like on this roller coaster, and we're just getting worse and worse and worse, and it's really hard to get out of that mind space. And so
Stephanie, your head is not under the pillow, Sister Stephanie.
No, I know.
Your head is not under the pillow.
Definitely not.
And the fact that you can talk the way that you do is very convincing, not only to give yourself courage, but also courage to others. The things that you stand for, even with your one voice, this is neither hopeless, it is not useless, it has an impact. There's a quote from Mandela which I like. I have it on my bedroom wall, so I'm going to glance up here for a moment, because I have to repeat it. There is no passion to be found playing small in settling for life than one that is less than the one that you're capable of living. Write that down, put it in your purse, stick it on your bedroom wall, because you are not playing small. You are playing with big ideas and big movements, And the opposition to us wants us to feel like this.
Yes.
All my life, they want us to feel we're too small to matter, that the ideas we have are unrealistic. How many times have you been told, Stephanie, live in the real world? Sister, you, we, Binal, everybody on this call, we live in the real world. And I like the words of John Lewis, the civil rights activist that crossed the Petrus Bridge way back in Alabama. And he says, always do what you can, no matter how small. Be prepared to be persistent for long-term systemic change. And he said, speak up, stand up, and make good trouble. So you put that pillow to one side, you're speaking up, you're standing up, and we all together make good trouble. What a fulfilling life it is that we can make this good trouble, that we can stand up to those criminal political leaders, that we can stand up to those criminal business leaders, that we can stand up to the ideologies of Milton Friedman and Hayek and all the rest of the neoliberal gang, that we can stand up to NATO, that we can stand up to the United States and its militarization policy, that we can stand up to China because we don't like the new aggression that we see in the rearmament that we can see. It takes heart, it takes conviction, and take courage. Your head is not under the pillow. Stephanie, you are making very good trouble, and I thank you for that. And the young people around the world are also finding their voice. One 14-year-old girl decides to sit outside the Swedish parliament with a placard, and all of a sudden, what happens? This has taken fire. The degree of protest in the world is on the rise. I know Bino's studies with Professor Chinawem will be the proof of this. We need 3% of the civilian population of a country to change things. So there we are. So I can go on, Stephanie. I want to make you feel better about who you are, what you're doing, and the decision that you take in your life. Thank you.
The Congress already makes me feel better. So
If we can quickly jump in. Yes, Greta Thunberg was with the placard in Sweden. If anyone, indigenous person having a placard in Manipur, that will not receive the worldwide attention. So there is also this kind of reporting, which is racialized, which we got to change.
Yeah.
So, but we are keeping hope alive. And just finally, Stephanie, we've been trying to see, I'm doing some research on the right to resistance, because it's really important when there's so much of violence perpetrated by those who are supposed to protect our lives. How do people resist? If you do it violently, you are termed criminal, you are termed put in jail, you are incarcerated. And then that's why the non-violent approach. But Frantz Fanon said, non-violence is also a tool of the bourgeoisie to control also the masses. So there is a lot of research that we got to do. But please read this essay called Power to the Powerless. I found this essay by Václav Havel, written in 1979.
Yeah.
Really powerful to be able to see, like some of us in this room cannot be sort of, fuzzed. We got to stand clear. People like Dr. Chinoy, people like Rainer, who has been leading us in Philip's clear ideas, your idea, Reiko's idea, Cora's idea, and the artists, we all have to put our heads clear and then really cut through this violence, patriarchy, capitalism, colonialism, all of it. It's not working. That's why I'm also ideating the word of looking at indigenous ways of governance. How did people, it's one of equality, not of exploitation, that we all are not commodities in the capitalist system, but we are people with soul, with heart, and we got to survive together. Thank you.
very good. Thank you, Bina. Okay, we're running a little bit behind time, so we really need to move on to the next segment, which fortunately happens to be music, because there's nothing like music to drown out our docile tones. So we have two artists, extra artists who are here today, in addition to Akira, and we are going to hear some of their music, as well as a third one who is going to be introduced by one of the others. So we have Judy Passimio and Joseph Paraganan, and we were going to hear from both of them today. So we'll start with Judy. So I will hand over to Judy now.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you for your sharing. Yeah, we need to be in touch with the realities of our emotions as well and where we stand. And I agree, it's really very overwhelming. Um, I am Judy from LILAC, Purple Action for Indigenous Women's Rights. And we have launched Babayanihan. It's a project as our response to pandemic. As we realize, pandemic has how do you say this, has highlighted pre-existing situations of our societies. The isolation and exclusion of Indigenous women have been very much an issue for decades, but the pandemic has really heightened this. Up until now, no official census has been made of the Indigenous people in the Philippines. And so therefore, with no numbers, they're invisible to government. There would be programs. There's even a law for the Indigenous peoples, and there's a commission devoted to them. But the programs are not grounded in their realities. So when the pandemic happened and the Philippines declared a lockdown last year, and Philippines has the longest lockdown ever, of course, LILAC, my organization, could not go to the community partners. So we just had to call and text, which was also very challenging because of the infrastructure of communications or the lack of it in the indigenous communities. So they have received no information. Suddenly they just found themselves being locked down, not allowed to go anywhere. They could not go to the farm. They could not go to the forests to get their food. And there are a lot of indigenous women who are agricultural workers and are daily wage earners. And with the lockdown, they could not earn any money. And so the lack of food, insecurity, and general anxiety of what is happening because of the isolation that they experience. Indigenous women especially, who are tasked to put food on the table, to care for their families, this was a serious concern. Equally alarming is the presence. There's no presence of government workers to give ayuda, or what we call support or relief. But the presence of the government there is in the form of military in the communities, especially where there are campaigns against development projects like minings and dams. This has intensified insecurity and fear among the communities. In fact, they fear, one of their greatest fears, that after the lockdown, they will find themselves landless because the government and the corporations have taken them away while they were in lockdown. And in some areas, the COVID-19 did not stop the land conflicts or the land grabbing. Particularly in Maguindanao, the southern part of the country, hundreds of indigenous families have been displaced by the eruption of violence in their communities at the height of pandemic. We would always hear, the main protection for COVID is to wash your hands, social distancing, and fortify your immunity or your immune system. But for these families who have been evacuated or displaced from their communities in temporary shelters, cramped together, no distancing whatsoever. In fact, violence against women were happening in this setup. And there's no water. The sources of water are far from their areas, and there's no food. So this has made them more vulnerable than ever. And where's the government? The government has really abandoned us. So when Bino was telling the story of Manipur, I felt, it's a reflection as well of what's happening in the Philippines. We were practically left to ourselves up until now. But worse, community leaders, activists who would dare to speak against these acts of violence or complain or lodge criticisms against the way this government is handling this pandemic. They are being killed. We are being harassed and vilified. LILAC, in its very tiny effort to reach out to the indigenous women, have launched this, as I've said, Babayanihan. Babaye is a Visayan term for women. Bayanihan is a Tagalog term for solidarity. So it's it's a portmanteau of babayanihan, women to women solidarity. It's not a big project. We just did fundraising with FB Live, Facebook Live, with artists pitching in just to catch attention. And we recorded stories of Indigenous women so that they can tell themselves what's happening in their area. And so we were able to reach out to student organizations, young women groups, and some, not your usual suspects of getting support from, like fashion designers and jewelers. And so they offered little tiny funds. And so we were able to launch Babayanihan. We were able to get food packs, hygiene kits, masks, and later on support for their food production, seeds, farm implements, and access to water source. But what is really inspiring is that because we could not go, we still cannot go to the areas. It's the Indigenous women themselves who have acted as frontliners, braving not just COVID, the exposure of COVID, but also the military who have put up checkpoints. Often they would be harassed and being accused of offering support to the terrorists and not to the Indigenous women. And so they took the pictures and the videos, which we will show later. And I showed these to Joseph, the next artist who will be talking in a while, who's also from a musician, songwriter. And he too was inspired to write a song about this. And so I added a few lines here and there, and together we put this video edited by Shar, who's also here in this call. So the video is to honor the efforts and the care work of Indigenous women and to inspire the others with this solidarity, but also to put out their stories and make them visible and somehow break this isolation that they're experiencing. But this is also part of our campaign of breaking isolation and seeking accountability. This Duterte government is a militarist and a violent response, has launched a violence response. And so we want that with this video, we will be able to contribute to showing that Indigenous women can and are taking care of their families and their communities. And just to add before I end, my thoughts on the reimagining. The defeat of misogyny, discrimination, violence, the defeat of corporate control over our natural resources and patriarchy. We need, and it has to be broken, the isolation and exclusion of Indigenous women, and that women-to-women solidarity should be nurtured and should be done without fear or without reprisal. I hope this video would show that the women should be recognized as frontliners in building a more humane, just, and nurturing societies. So now we share this. Stephanie, when we feel overwhelmed, we just really look to our Indigenous women partners. They are our inspiration. They who struggle every day to survive. And so I hope this video will also brush off somehow that inspiration and courage to you and to others. Thank you.
Sa harap ng paghihirap, sa gitna ng mga sakuna, sa mga araw na kahihapa, hanap ay lakas at konting pahinga. Sa liblib mo, magkakakuha, kasama ang takot at pag-iisa, nakaligtaan, nakalimutan, nag-iintay ng panggusto. Pagkaliwanag ng at ang bukas ay patay.
Thank you, Judy. That was such a really nice song. Some really great pictures in there, and very well put together. So we'll move straight on to Joseph because we are running quite a bit behind time. So Joseph, I'll just hand straight over. Joseph, straight over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. A couple of weeks into the start of the lockdown, and as Judy said, we are experiencing here in the Philippines what is considered as one of the longest COVID-19 lockdowns in the world. And as our small unit of 3, myself, Judy, and our daughter, Yolina, was just starting to figure out how we would cope, slowly working out elements of our daily routine, we were also starting to anxiously think about how things would or should be, what changes would and should take place when we're over this pandemic. Imagining the future after the pandemic, the Indian activist novelist author Arundhati Roy said it best when she described the pandemic as a portal to a better world and an opportunity to break from the past and start anew. What we bring to that new world and what we leave behind in this old world are important questions to ask ourselves in the transition. These are the questions that the song Pagkatapos Nito, or When This Is Over, ponders upon. Will our world after the pandemic be the same, violent, unequal, and unjust world? Or will we leave these things behind and build a better society? The song is performed by Village Idiots with Bong Ramilo. The music video is a collaboration with independent filmmaker J.L. Burgos. The video perfectly captures the spirit of the song in the cardboard placards, in the exterior of urban poor communities and the city streets, and in the faces of ordinary people, anxious and worried, but also indignant, also hopeful that we will rise up, we will arise when this is over. We're happy to share 2 songs to all of you. You will hear first Pagkatapos Nito, or When This Is Over, by the Village Idiots, followed by Sandayati Faye's haunting rendition of the spiritual We Shall Overcome. Sandayati is a Filipina-American singer-songwriter living in Bali, Indonesia, and a fellow member of the Asian Music for People's Peace and Progress, or AMP3, a collective of progressive musicians in Asia. These songs are our contribution to our collective effort of reimagining and struggling, working, and fighting for a just world. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. And just before I play your video, just because we're supposed to be finishing pretty well right now, I think we're going to have to just show your video and then move straight to the closing statement. So unfortunately, we won't have time for Sandayati's song, which is a bit of a shame, but we're about to run very badly over time. Okay, so I'll just cut straight to the picture.
Okay lang yung virus na yan. Yung mga sa grupo.
Pagkatapos nito, babalik lang ba tayo sa normal? Sa mabilis na takbo ng buhay, araw-araw ay sugal. Silang panalo, tayo ang talunan, sa araw-araw na pakikipagsapalaran. Yan bang babalikan pagkatapos nito? Yan bang babalikan pagkatapos nito? Pagkatapos nito, balik lang ba sa dating gawin? Sa marahas na takbo ng buhay, puno ng takot at pangamba. Ligalig ang laking kaulayaw, mula umaga hanggang gabi. Yan bang haharapin pagkatapos nito? Yan bang haharapin pagkatapos nito? Pagkatapos nito, may bago tayong lakas. Sama-sama nating tahakin ang ating landas. Iwawasto ang liko-likong daan, isisigaw ang ating panawagan. Mas maayos na lipunan pagkatapos nito. Mas maayos na lipunan pagkatapos nito. Alam na natin ang dapat na gawin. Maraming dapat na baguhin. Anong uunahin, kailan sisimulan? Pagising natin, kinabukasan, pagbangon natin pagkatapos nito. Pagbangon natin pagkatapos nito. Babangon tayo pagkatapos nito. Babangon tayo pagkatapos nito.
Thanks, Joseph. Another really great song with some really nice visuals and pictures and very well put together. Okay, so I'm going to now hand straight over to Artis, who is one of the co-coordinators for our Barcelona Peace Congress, and she's going to speak briefly on that.
First of all, thank you all to join this meeting. I will share my screen, and as Stephanie says, we are run out of time, then I will try to be quick with my intervention. As Sean said at the beginning, our Congress will be held in Barcelona this October, Reimagine Our World, Action for Peace and Justice. And we are going to organize the Congress in the CCCB, that is the Cultural Center of Barcelona. And as you can say, Plaza Catalunya is the center of Barcelona, then it's 5 minutes from the center. We will hold the plenaries in the hall of the CCCB and also in the Patio of Las Donas, that it's in air. Then we are thinking that we are going to do something like we did in Berlin last Congress on Friday, something symbolic, and also we are going to do a peace party on Saturday. The workshops will be in, as you can see, the green point. We are held in front of the CCCB in Blanquerna. Then it's like 2 minutes from the CCCB, and as shown just put in the chat, you can follow all the informations in our Facebook, our Twitter, and the Instagram of the IPB. And also you can find all the information in our website, where you can find all the preparatory conferences that are held in all the world, in Spain, but also internationally. Most of them are webinars, then we all can be involved. And also you can find all the supporter organizations, and if you know other organizations that want to be partners and supporters, it will help us to spread the word to all the world. Then, well, this is all the information. I see you in October, and I think Stephanie will share us the super video that we carry on from this.
Every problem we face, how does a feasible solution? There's a feasible solution to the pandemic. How do we know that? Because many countries are implementing. What about heating the environment? Yes, there are feasible measures, essentially meet the IPCC standards, give us a fair chance of solving the problem, even a better existence. Nuclear weapons, obviously, we know how to deal with them, get rid of them. Go case by case, there's almost nothing that we don't have a way to deal with. What's missing? The will and the commitment. Now, is organized human society capable of getting to that point? Your speculation's as good as mine. The only thing we can do is hope that it's true, put all our efforts and energy into trying to make it become true. There's no alternative.
And I will give the floor to the co-president, Philip Jennings, who is going to do the official close.
Philip, you have
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm here. I will make these closing remarks. Message to Joseph: when this is over, we will not forget the 3.4 million people to date who have lost their lives, the reasons why, and how the world failed them. We will remember, we will not forget, and we will put this reality into the face of those great global decision makers and asking for change. Rainer mentioned a cloud that always carries rain. Well, our clouds carry the rain of ideas. And this is the idea of Barcelona, where we bring together all strands of our movement to demand a change. That we are there to speak up, to stand up, and to make good trouble, and also to make good policies for peace and for action. We have ideas for the social contract. We have ideas for the carbon neutral world. We have ideas as to how to reinforce our democracy and workers' rights and human rights. We have ideas with dealing with corruption and about how we build disarmament and to bring about a nuclear-free world. We have ideas for common security. And also, I think a message I'd like to repeat today is that we have this idea of how we can reimagine our cooperation in Asia. The IPB is on a mission for the peace movement in the region and worldwide to recognize the work that you do in the region, the voice of indigenous peoples in the region, and for your voice to be heard in the highest councils. We want to invest our time and our energy to ensure that the voice of Asia is heard. In Wales, my own country, we have a theatre, and on that wall of the theatre, the following words are written: "From these stones, horizons sing. From the work of the IPB, new horizons sing. From the work of the AEPF, new horizons sing. From the work of the climate change movement, the peace movement, and the labor movement, we will sing of those new horizons in Barcelona. We will make good trouble. We will have good ideas, and we will have great action emerging from the Barcelona Congress. Sign up, get there, be there in whatever form that you can. A very warm welcome awaits. And I can tell you, Stephanie, that none of us will have our heads on the pillow when we get to Barcelona. We will be standing up and making a strong stand. My love to all of you, my respect to all of you. Thank you for putting this together. And we look forward to our future cooperation with the AEPF and also with the singers and the songwriters and the poets and the peace activists that have been on display today. Thank you.
Okay, then on Philip's note, then we will officially close this session. Thank you all for coming, and I hope that wherever you are, there is some sunshine, or if it's that you can go and enjoy, or if it's the evening that you can toddle off into bed and have a calming, restful sleep, knowing that we are taking care of everything that's going wrong with our world. So with that, I wish you all goodbye.